Dr. K.S. Chugh is an emeritus professor and former chairman, Department of Medicine, and professor and head, Department of Nephrology, Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, India. Professor Chugh has been a past president of the Asian Pacific Society of Nephrology, past president of the Association of Physicians of India, the president of the Indian College of Physicians, president of the Indian Society of Nephrology, president of Indian Society of Organ Transplantation, and a former member of the nominating committee of the International Society of Nephrology, a member task force ISN Commission on Acute Renal Failure. He is currently the president of the Indian Society of Hemodialysis, a member of the Council of International Society of Nephrology, and a member of ISN Commission on Global Advancement of Nephrology. Dr. Chugh has chaired 26 scientific sessions and delivered 50 plenary and invited lectures in international congresses all over the world. Dr. Chugh has been a member of WHO Advisory Committee on Classification of Tropical Renal Diseases and a member of the WHO CRO Guidelines Committee for the Clinical Management of Snake Bites in Southeast Asian region. He was the Vice President, Organizing Committee of the International Congress of Nephrology, held in Sydney, Australia, May 1997. Considered as father of nephrology in India, Dr. Chugh is a world-renowned physician and a nephrologist, and a recipient of Padma Shri Award, Honorary Fellowship of the Royal College of Physicians, London, FRCP, and has the singular distinction of being the only Indian physician to be the recipient of the Honorary Fellowship of the American College of Physicians. He is also the recipient of Gifted Medical Teacher Award of the Association of Physicians of India, the Dhanvantri National Award, and Dr. B.C. Roy National Award as the Eminent Medical Man of the Year 1992. Dr. Chugh was the first Asian nephrologist who was honored by the National Kidney Foundation of USA with Distinguished International Award, and by the Kidney International with the Nephrology Forum Award. Besides these, he is a recipient of 24 more national and international awards, including Nishan-e Khalsa Award and the Bharat Gaurav Award. Born on 12th December 1932 at Patti, a place 30 miles away from Amritsar, the city of Golden Temple, one could see the determination and dedication of Dr. Chugh even as a young medical graduate and postgraduate. A never-say-die attitude helped him push faster through the slow tracks of the country and achieve what others had given up. Well reputed for his steadfast devotion to scholarship in nephrology, he is also an embodiment of bonhomie and camaraderie. With these qualities of head and heart, Dr. Chugh is a favorite of most. Let me take this opportunity now to talk to Professor Chugh. Dr. Chugh, when did you decide to become a nephrologist?
5 decades ago, nephrology as an organized discipline did not exist anywhere in the world. I was a fourth-year medical student in 1954, and at that time, no treatment of renal failure was available except the Bull's diet, which was totally ineffective in managing these patients. The clinicians as well as the students realized the futility of this treatment. At this very time, the reports were pouring in from the rest of the world that a dialysis machine had been devised by Dr. William Koff. And also, while going through the library at that time, I came across a report in the Lancet that a new diagnostic approach to the diagnosis of kidney had been published, and that was on renal biopsies. Simultaneously, another report appeared about the first successful transplantation in the world, which was carried out in Boston by Joseph Murray, Humes, and J.P. Merrill. This was between identical twins, and the transplant was successful. This gave me a hope that it is possible that in future we may be able to do something for these patients, and I decided that I'll take up renal medicine as my career in the future. I passed my MBBS from the medical school in Amritsar in 1955, and I started preparing for submitting a thesis plan, as was the practice at that time, for pursuing MD in medicine. I selected evaluation of renal biopsy as a diagnostic measure for my thesis subject, and at the same time I applied that I may be given permission to do MD medicine with renal diseases as my special subject. At that time, only cardiology, gastroenterology, and neurology were the recognized disciplines. So when my plan went to the Punjab University and it was discussed in the Faculty of Medical Sciences, my plan was approved, but they objected to the special subject of kidney diseases because they said that this does not exist anywhere in the world and I could not be permitted to do MD medicine with kidney diseases as my special subject. So it took 3 months and the plan came back to me, and the suggestion was that whereas I could pursue the thesis project, but my special subject would be gastroenterology. Now this was not acceptable to me. I was wanting to do MD with renal diseases. I talked to my mentor at that time. In fact, he was also not very keen that I should do MD with renal diseases because he was a gastroenterologist himself. In any case, I did not accept this, and I applied to the Punjab University again that I wanted to do MD with renal diseases as my special subject. They discussed the plan again, and this time a suggestion came back to me that if I'm not wanting to do gastroenterology, I could do cardiology as my special subject. When this came to me again, I didn't want to accept this. Perhaps it was my obstinacy at that time. I wanted to pursue kidney as my career, so therefore I applied for the third time, giving instances from the world literature as to how much now could be done for patients with kidney disease. When this plan went to the medical sciences faculty of the Punjab University third time, I learned later that the dean of the Faculty of Medical Sciences commented that this person seems to be a madman. Let him do MD with kidney diseases if he is so insistent on doing so. And therefore, after about 9 or 10 months of struggle, I was accepted by the Punjab University to do my MD medicine with renal diseases as my subject. This is how I started my career as in the field of nephrology.
Dr. Chugh, did you think of going to USA or UK for special training?
See, after I got selected in the Postgraduate Institute of Chandigarh, and I got involved in dialyzing patients, I had also done a lot of work by that time on kidney biopsies, and therefore I started investigating the patients of renal diseases at Chandigarh. I thought at that time my aim was to set up a new department, although it did come to my mind that I should go for training outside, but I was doing fairly well, and therefore I, with the help of the fellows in medicine who were there at that time, we started some projects on renal failure, we started publishing on kidney diseases, and we actively started doing dialysis work. And therefore, at that time, I did not go to UK or USA for further training. However, I did go to Hammersmith Hospital, and this was in 1967. But by that time, our unit had been fully established. During my stay in Hammersmith Hospital, I worked with Dr. Oliver Wrong. The renal unit actually did not have a dialysis center in that department. The dialysis was under the care of urologists in Hammersmith Hospital, and renal transplantations were actively going on. Dr. Oliver Wrong was largely involved in acid base and electrolyte problems. I worked on a project which involved making aluminium resins, the cation exchange resins with aluminium phase, and we published that work in the Lancet. But unfortunately, soon we realized that aluminium was a toxic substance. I think we received a number of critical comments on our work because aluminium was toxic, and therefore the aluminium phase resins were not really pursued. During this time, I met several of the important renal physicians in United Kingdom, and more importantly, Dr. Stuart Cameron in Guy's Hospital. And I was very impressed with the kind of nephrology which was being pursued by Dr. Stuart Cameron. And later on, I also went to Newcastle upon Tyne, where Dr. David Kerr had improvised the chronic dialysis system by using Keel's boards and even without monitors, and I picked up lots of things from Dr. David Kerr's unit. We used to make our own Teflon tips, and for shunts also, we were using the Teflon material at that time. I returned to Chandigarh in 1968, and then we started the chronic dialysis program with our own improvised setup.
Dr. Chugh, when did you start the training program in nephrology in PGI Chandigarh? Later on, PGI Chandigarh became the mecca of nephrology education in the country. So how did it all happen?
Now, the training program in nephrology at the PGI Chandigarh was started in 1969. In fact, we recruited two MDs. One was from Madras and the other was from the Armed Forces Medical Services. And we started this organized course of nephrology in 1969. This was a 2-year course. The candidates were supposed to work on a project and at the same time involve themselves in all the clinical as well as research work in nephrology. The first batch of 2 candidates passed in the year 1971, and it might surprise some of the people that this examination in DM nephrology at Chandigarh took place 1 year before the American Board of Nephrology examination, which took place in 1972. So therefore, I can claim that we were 1 year ahead of the Board of Examination in Nephrology in the United States.
Dr. Chugh, PGI achieved eminence as the best department of the country. Had you ever conceived it in the beginning that this is how it would develop, and how did it happen? Was there a contribution by others for the development of this department?
I can say it is never a single man's effort. I think when we started doing some good work at the PGI Chandigarh and everybody appreciated that the department was coming very well, our training program was so well organized that the fellows took part in the various research projects, in also learning the basic techniques of dialysis, and also that in the institute there was a tradition of having the clinical meetings and clinico-pathological conferences, and we also organized regular bedside teaching programs. And the result was that this 2-year period, which was spent by these candidates during their nephrology training, they picked up almost everything. We encouraged them to sort of participate in group discussions, in seminars. We also organized journal clubs. The result there was that whatever was coming up in the literature, from anywhere in the world, we used to discuss them regularly. And therefore, we were all, actually I would include myself, learning what was happening in the rest of the world, and that way our candidates were updated for the developments in the world. The result was that not only that when the candidates, these people, after doing their DM nephrology, they went back to their institutions, they started sort of developing the same dialysis and other diagnostic facilities in their own institutions. Some of them, in fact, went abroad. And I'm very happy to say that any fellow who went abroad and was working in those units, our candidates' performance was so good that everybody was very happy with the training in Chandigarh. And that way, I think they created a tremendous impression outside as well as inside the country. Gradually, the standard of training improved, and I'm proud to say that some of the fellows whom you all know very well, they have done so well in other countries like United States that they are world leaders today. Let me give you the examples of Dr. Brian Pereira. He went to United States in 1989, and within a period of about 12 years or 13 years, he became one of the renowned nephrologists of that country. He delivered plenary lectures to the American Society of Nephrology. He became the president of the National Kidney Foundation of the United States, and at the moment he is the president of the New England Medical Center, where he had joined as a fellow in 1989. Similarly, another fellow who was trained in Chandigarh, Dr. Ravi Mehta, today he is an accepted authority on the continuous renal replacement therapy. And both of them have written books which are of international standards and are comparable to any textbook published from anywhere. In the country, the fellows who had their training at Chandigarh, they went and headed their departments all over, and I can say that the work which has been done by them during the last 2 or 3 decades found a place in the national and international journals, as well as the facilities which they have established everywhere in the country is known to everybody. And I can proudly say that they have done extremely well, and that is how Chandigarh gained the reputation.
Dr. Chugh, you played a stellar role in establishing the Indian Society of Nephrology. There must have been very few nephrologists when the first meeting started. How did it all happen, and can you tell us as to when was the first meeting held and how did the Indian Society of Nephrology grow?
The Indian Society of Nephrology was founded by me and Dr. P. Koshi of Vellore in 1970, and we had our first meeting along with the Association of Physicians of India in Mangalore in January 1971. At that time, I invited Dr. E. Roteller, who was the then president of the EDTA, to come and inaugurate the Indian Society of Nephrology. Frankly speaking, apart from myself, who was a qualified nephrologist at that time, but I must say that we were 15 or 16 at that time in 1970 who were clearly involved in nephrology, and gradually the Indian Society of Nephrology became an established society, and today we are over 800 in this country. If one goes back to the annual congresses of the Indian Society of Nephrology, the standard of research work being presented in these meetings has improved tremendously, and that is largely because after Chandigarh, several centers in the country had been established for starting the DM courses, and the training programs had started everywhere, and the result was that more and more nephrologists who were well trained sort of came up and joined the society, and I think our performance has been very good. The impact of this society was felt when, for the first time in 1974, Dr. Kuentijk organized the first colloquium of nephrology in Singapore. I had presented the work which was being done at that time, and I remember Dr. K.V. Johnny and Dr. Mohan Rao also attended that meeting. And everybody in that colloquium appreciated the efforts which we had made in India, because in our surrounding countries in the Southeast Asia or Asian countries, not much had been done by that time. Therefore, Indian Society of Nephrology gained a tremendous reputation. Later on, in 1979, I was again invited to New York by Dr. Merrill and Dr. Eli Friedman at the first conference of the International Artificial Internal Organs, where I presented the type of therapeutic approach and the state of the Indian nephrology in that meeting. By that time, we had done about 365 transplants, and about 30 dialysis centers had been established, and I had collected statistics from the whole of the country and had presented there. So this is how, over the years, Indian Society of Nephrology started being recognized out in the outside world as well. One thing which I did was that every year, at the time of the annual congresses of the Indian Society of Nephrology, we used to invite some of the very distinguished nephrologists from UK or United States or from Europe or Australia to come and participate. This gave a tremendous exposure to the consultants as well as the fellows who were working in nephrology those times, and I think that also helped us in updating our knowledge at the time of our annual meetings. From the Indian Society of Nephrology, I remember in 1972, I started corresponding with Dr. Ushima in Japan and Dr. Priscilla Kincaid Smith that we should form an Asian Society of Nephrology. Dr. Ushima, somewhere in 1973, he wrote to me and asked me how many members we were in our society, and I said that we are about 120 by that time, and he wrote to me that we are 2,300 in Japan, and therefore at that time it was not possible to make a society till sufficient number of countries from the region sort of came up with larger number of nephrologists. So we couldn't make a society at that time. But when we met in Singapore in 1974, again I talked to Dr. Priscilla Kincaid Smith that we should work towards forming an Asian Society of Nephrology. In 1979, the first meeting of the Asian Society, Asian Congress of Nephrology, took place in Tokyo along with the Asian Colloquium in Nephrology. After 1979, the second meeting of the Asian Pacific Congress took place in Melbourne in 1983. That Congress was held under joint leadership of Dr. Priscilla Kincaid Smith and Dr. Ishima, followed by a Congress in Singapore. And at the time of the Singapore meeting, then we made a council of elected representatives on the Asian Pacific Society of Nephrology. Dr. Priscilla Kincaid Smith was elected as the first president, and then the next conference was held in Beijing, where Dr. Hatano was the president, and at that time I was elected as the president-elect unanimously at the Beijing conference. Dr. Hatano presided over the 5th Asian Pacific Congress of Nephrology, which was held in Delhi in 1992. I presided over the meeting in Hong Kong in 1995. So therefore, from the Indian Society of Nephrology, when other societies had also become active in the Asian region, we had formed an Asian Pacific Society of Nephrology, which is today, again, has become a very important society in the world.
Dr. Chugh, over the years, you became a leading authority in nephrology, not only in India and the Asian Pacific region, but also in the international community. How did it come about?
Actually, first of all, I would like to say that because of the work which we were doing at Chandigarh, which largely dealt with tropical problems, I regularly presented our work in the various national and international scientific meetings. I had almost attended all the international congresses and made it a point to present our work. We used to attend the Asian Pacific Congresses and also the colloquia in nephrology, and the result was that they accepted that most of the topical work which was coming out was from 2 or 3 centers only, and our center was one of the leading centers which established the pattern of acute renal failure in India and in the tropical world. One of the major factors which gave recognition to our center was that I presented our work in the national as well as Asian and international meetings. And I remember that I regularly attended all these conferences. We had published a lot on the pattern of acute renal failure in the tropical countries, the pattern of glomerular disease, and some of the problems which the rest of the world did not see. For example, renal disease in leprosy or in tuberculosis, and also some of the conditions like snake venom induced renal disease. Now such like work, when I presented outside in the international forums, and which was also published, it gave me a tremendous recognition by the rest of the world. The result was that I was frequently invited, to most of the meetings, and although our institute didn't have enough funds for me to go and attend these meetings, I attended those meetings on invitations. Gradually, from the Asian Society, we moved to the International Society, and I remember when we in 1992, when we had the 5th Asian Pacific Congress of Nephrology in Delhi, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Schreier had attended that meeting. Dr. Robinson was the president of the International Society at that time, and Dr. Schreier was the vice president. At that time, Dr. Robinson mooted an idea that why not that international society should meet every 2 years with the various regional societies of the world, like say South American Society or the EDTA, or with American Society of Nephrology, or with Asian Pacific or African Society, and every 10 years this would be repeated. Now this idea was discussed in the International Society of Nephrology and had met its approval. So therefore, in 1993, when we met at Jerusalem, the representatives of the Australian Society of Nephrology, along with me, when I was the president of the Asian Pacific Society of Nephrology, we presented a joint bid to the International Society of Nephrology for the conference in Sydney in 1997. After a lot of discussion, the International Society of Nephrology Council accepted that we should start holding these joint meetings. So therefore, one thing which gave us recognition was now to meet regularly with the International Society of Nephrology. The 1997 Sydney conference, in lieu of what we had presented a joint bid, appointed me as the vice president of the organizing committee of the World Congress in Sydney, along with Dr. Ross Bailey. The second thing I must say, in 1993, I had approached Dr. Stuart Cameron, who was the president at that time. We are holding our Silver Jubilee Conference of the Indian Society of Nephrology at Chandigarh. Dr. Stuart Cameron, I must say, was very, very helpful to us, and in fact, jointly we arranged a CME on behalf of the International Society of Nephrology in Chandigarh, for which Dr. Cameron had arranged a financial support of about $40,000, and we brought about 15 or 16 of the international authorities in renal disease to Chandigarh at the time of the Silver Jubilee meeting. One of the impact of this meeting was, I think Dr. Cameron sort of advised all visiting faculty that they should visit all centers in the country, the important academic centers in the country, in groups of 2, so that we could evaluate and assess the kind of facilities which were available in the Indian centers, so that the international society could provide assistance wherever it was needed in terms of research facilities or in terms of enhancing the library facilities. And this is where I played a very pivotal role in organizing the visits of these international authorities to various centers. I think this was very tremendous. It was of a great help to the Indian Society of Nephrology members that there was a direct relationship established with various centers in the world, and they could send their fellows or could obtain assistance from them directly. And the next thing which happened was that I think again with the initiative of Dr. Stuart Cameron and Dr. Schreier, that the COMGAN was established. The COMGAN, the Commission of Global Advancement of Nephrology, was largely established to provide assistance to various centers in the developing countries. And I was taken as a member of the COMGAN in 1995 to represent India. Now, I used this opportunity for our advancement in this country, and the result was that we could, with the assistance of the COMGAN, we could bring distinguished nephrologists every year to India at the time of the Indian Society of Nephrology meetings. Not only that, uh, during some earlier years, I had been visiting the neighboring countries like Nepal and also Bangladesh, but the facilities of nephrology or the work in nephrology was very minimal in those countries. Now, with the help of the COMGAN faculty, I organized back to back meetings with the Indian Society of Nephrology in the surrounding countries of SAARC. I thought the same faculty could travel to Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka so that we could assist those countries in through the CMEs and update sessions and also the visit of these distinguished people, which was very helpful to them as well. And therefore, we extended our CME program not in India with the help of COMGAN, but also took these facilities to the neighboring countries of SAARC. And I think this job, every year, I was the one who was organizing with the assistance of the COMGAN. Another thing happened, I think this was earlier, which I must say, that in 1988, I was selected by the team of the Kidney International Journal to present a nephrology forum, and the team from Boston, Dr. John Harrington and Dr. Nick Medias and Dr. Cohen had come over to India for conducting the nephrology forum at Chandigarh, and this was for the first time any nephrologists from the Asian countries had presented a nephrology forum. Also, a forum was organized in Thailand at that time, which was presented by Dr. Visit Setprija. And lastly, I must say that in 2000, we had a problem in our country of the water treatment available in the various centers, and I had approached Dr. John Dirks, who was the chairman of the COMGAN at that time, that if they could assist us in organizing a meeting in Chandigarh, in India, where we could discuss the water treatment problems. Dr. John Dirks was very helpful, and in fact he sort of talked to the Baxter International, who at his sort of suggestion agreed to provide a financial assistance of US dollar 35,000 for organizing a consensus conference on the quality of dialysis, which included the water treatment, and that was done at Bombay. And we had invited various authorities in dialysis as well as in water treatment system, and we had a very successful meeting. And this was all with the assistance of the International Society of Nephrology through the COMGAN. I think COMGAN has played a very major role in helping the Indian nephrology in advancing, both in terms of research as well as in the clinical facilities. And lastly, I must say that I was picked up by the WHO for the book which was edited by Dr. Jacob Chugh and Dr. Sine on classification of tropical renal disease, and this was in 1985. I was associated as a member of the editorial team which edited that book. And I contributed, some of the chapters in that book, which uh, has been a well cited book, from all points of view from the tropical region. I was also appointed as a member of the advisory committee of the WHO workshop, which was held in Thailand and was chaired by David Worrell. This was on snakebite management problems in the Southeastern Asian regions. And therefore, through various agencies, by presenting our work which we had done in India and also being associated with the WHO, with the International Society of Nephrology, and also with the COMGAN, I tried my best to serve the interests of the Nephrology Society in India as well as in the neighboring countries. I think this is how I can say, but largely it was our work which we had been presenting, as well as the efforts made both at the national and international level, that I was accepted as a nephrologist from India who had contributed in nephrology to the world. I must also say that finally I became a member of the nominating committee of the International Society of Nephrology. At that time, it was Professor Hugh de Wardner who had proposed my name for coming on the nominating committee, and finally I was elected to the Council of the International Society of Nephrology, and I think this was the first time anybody from India had gone to the International Society of Nephrology Council.